minutes, you're gonna go and say, is it worth the risk? And the answer is yes. I'm fine with that because Jesus and his disciples were accused several times of being, and I quote, out of their minds when they called attention to the darkness that nobody wanted to look at. So I'm gonna give 3 statements before I go into these weird stories, all right? First statement goes like this: the demonic realm is real. And I have historically mostly ignored it or minimized it. I'm usually suspicious of anyone who comes up to me in the lobby or sends me an email and goes, hey, Jim, I think I had a demonic experience or encounter or vision. I'll just look back at him going, or too many tacos, I'm like, And in my mind, I'm going, bless your heart, Prozac, something, right? That's been not anymore. The other one, and this is I just ask you to stay to the end, and if you walk out at the end of this next statement, you're gonna miss it, okay? So please listen carefully. The rule of separation of church and state was created to keep the state out of the church, not silence the voice of the church in the direction of our nation. See, my dilemma in that is this: what do I do? What do we do when the state becomes religious in nature and policy, getting involved in marriage and parenting and gender? And for the record, the Bible is clear that when the Antichrist comes, please remember that, he will blur the line between government and religion and will combine them into one thing. And the government will become the religion and will be opposed to any other belief system or questions it. They'll squelch it. Here's my third statement. The main outcome for me of this series, hopefully for you too, is we begin to see and appreciate and experience Jesus on a bigger level. He'll get bigger and stronger, right? We'll have such a vision for Jesus that we look at this other stuff that we're talking about. I do not have time for that anymore. I have bigger fish to fry. So, 2 stories that got my attention. And they're weird, I understand. But here's what, I was joking with the security team. You have to go home with me. Because I'm pretty sure 2 black Suburbans might show up at my gate. And just so you know, I always loved you, okay? This might be it, but I was nervous laughter, I get it. I wanna make sure I get this right because I ran this sermon by all my elders and they're like, it's risky, Jim, but if that's what God's put on your heart, go for it. I'm like, okay. So here's some of you going, what is he about to say? All right, buckle up. All right, so a few months ago, I had a chance to tour downtown Colorado State Capitol building with a friend of mine who used to work there. And they give you this guide, and he takes you through everything, right? And our guide was amazing. He takes us down underneath the Capitol building. There's all these tunnels that run all over Denver, not for the reasons that you think. Anyway, but we're going off, and he's telling us the history of the building, all that. But we're in the elevator, and then he asked how we all knew one another. There's like 5 of us. And I said, oh, I'm their pastor. And he was like, whoa, are you a believer? I'm like, yeah. And for the next couple hours, man, we just talked about Jesus. I mean, we found like an airlock where there were no cameras and stuff like that, and Jesus and all this stuff, all right? But I could also tell that he was cautiously checking me out, like to see, are you safe or not? And I guess I passed the test because eventually he began to tell me some of the darker spiritual encounters that he had experienced in downtown Denver around our Capitol building, especially back when all the protests were happening. Like a while back, right? Well, while we all saw the parades and the rioting on the news, what the media did not capture was the significant presence of both men and women involved in witchcraft and sorcery who were attacking and speaking demonic incantations and curses over any person or official who opposed the chaos. And my friend said, Jim, I just stood and I just prayed. All I could do was pray in the name and the power of Jesus, and they saw me praying. And they knew what I was doing, and I could see they were cursing me. They were targeting me, but they wouldn't come. It's like they couldn't come close to me. It's like something was protecting me. This guy loves Jesus. He can't help talking about Jesus. So wait. So then he tells me a weird story. So that wasn't weird. That's nothing. All right. So one of his jobs in the past was he trained special forces, different skills. And over time, because he can't help talking about his faith, he been working with this one soldier, and the soldier says, I want to become a Christian. But when my friend led him in a prayer, when he got to it, the soldier physically could not utter the name Jesus. He would get stuck. He'd go, I believe it. And his throat would close. And so my friend looks at him and goes, what's going on here? He goes, well, you don't know what's in me. He says, well, tell me. And some of you who are stationed in the Middle East, you're gonna get this better than some of the rest of us. But he says, I was over in Afghanistan, and we're working our way down the street, and we're kicking in doors, and I kick in this back room of this house, and I look, and there's a priest in front of an altar doing something, and I am frozen. I can't move. I'm terrified. It feels like I can't move. But I can see that I am in a circle of blood, and I can't move. This priest finishes whatever he's doing over there. He walks by the soldier, looks him in the eye, walks out the door, and the soldier says, I must kill this man, because if I don't, something bad will happen. So the man goes out the door, and the soldier now can move. He opens the door and says, freeze, and the man turns around, reaches for something, and the soldier shoots him, and as he shoots him, he says, a black serpent came out of that priest and came into my chest. That's what's in me. And my friend says, we can take care of that. And he puts his hand on him, and they begin to pray. And this is how my friend, I'm leaving his name out of it, all right, intentionally. He says, Jim, we were praying, and I didn't see it, but the soldier did. An angel came into that room, reached in this soldier's chest, pulled that serpent out, and carried it away. And the soldier went, that's it. That's what was in me. And when it was gone, he accepted Christ as his Lord and Savior right there on the spot. Now, that's a good story. Okay, I didn't do that. You know where I went? Come on, really? Okay, bless you, bless your heart, right. But something inside of me also said, Jim, pay attention. There's crazies out there. This guy was not crazy. He knows God's word. He loves Jesus. He has no reason to tell me this story the first time we meet. I think God did, and I think this is part of why he told me that story. And then, and I'm driving home later that night, because I'm really messed up. I started remembering the stories of my missionary friends in Africa and Haiti. They're not dumb, all right? They're PhDs and MDs, they're doctors, they're educators, and they tell me similar stories. And I know they're not crazy. So I'm gonna lean into this. So after the tour, I began to do some research on my own of some of the things my friend had hinted at. I discovered this, and some of you who are really into history, you're gonna get this, all right? I discovered that since antiquity, for thousands of years, architecture, the way buildings are designed, they are designed to mimic or capture spiritual energy by replicating ancient practices. Have you ever heard of that, right? You can Google anything I'm about to say if you don't believe me, but I found this out, like, Our Capitol building in Denver is very similar to the Capitol building in Washington, D.C., because at one time, Denver was gonna serve as a backup capital should the coast ever get attacked. I'm like, oh, that's cool. I didn't know that. I also learned that both buildings were built by builders associated with the Freemasons, the oldest fraternity in the world with very sketchy spiritual practices. They claim to be non-religious, but when they read from the Bible, which they do, they remove any reference to Jesus. We don't want to be called Christian. Yeah, I bet. And here's where it gets weirder. And it's not even the weirdest yet, okay? In front of both Capitol buildings is an obelisk, all right? It's a stone monument, okay? This is why there's a parental warning up here, okay? That monument is fashioned after an ancient pagan statue, which according to Egyptian pagan religion is symbolic of the missing penis of the Egyptian god Osiris, who was cut up into 14 pieces and thrown into the Nile River. His wife, Isis, recovered everything except his genitals, so his wife, Isis, replaced it with a rock statue, the obelisk. So basically, it's a giant penis, all right? That's the medical term. You're fine, okay. Beneath the statue, the Masons have also placed a symbolic seed or testicle. Gets better, right? The dome of both Capitol buildings faces the obelisk and is architecturally called the uterus of Isis, Osiris's wife. The dome represents a pregnant Isis. This is what the Egyptians did. In a special ceremony, the seed of Osiris was called up from the land of the dead and impregnated Isis with the reincarnated Osiris in the form of her son Horus. Now here's where it gets even weirder and why these two symbols are all over the world, always put together. On election day in both Washington and in Denver, at a local temple, a worship service is held asking that the seed of Osiris to magically, I would say demonically, come up from the realm of the dead through the giant obelisk phallic symbol and impregnate through the womb of Isis, the reincarnation of the god Osiris, to empower the sitting governor or president. And all of this is symbolic and ultimate prophecy found in Revelation 17 and 20, where Osiris, where there he's called Magog, are closely tied and representative of the Antichrist.